Welcome back, everyone. Today we're going to be diving into a world of, well, power and betrayal. And resilience, too, I guess. It's the early life of Mary Tudor.
Yeah, Mary Tudor. Most people just know her as Bloody Mary.
Right, Bloody Mary.
But her story is so much more than that chilling nickname. Before the fear, before the flames, there was just this young woman trying to find her way in a world that was, well, more treacherous than we could probably imagine.
And luckily for us, we've got some really incredible sources to help us understand it all.
Oh, yeah, definitely. First-hand accounts, historical analyses, all that good stuff.
Yeah, they paint a really, really vivid picture of, what life was like for her, shaped by these extraordinary circumstances.
Yeah, absolutely.
So are you ready to kind of unravel this story to see Mary Tudor before she became Bloody Mary?
I am, yeah. Let's jump in. Let's go all the way back to 1516.
Okay.
When Mary, the long-awaited child of King Henry VIII and Catherine of Aragon, is born. Big celebrations, you know how it is.
Oh, yeah.
Hailed as the Pearl, doted on by her father.
It's just, wow. What a contrast, right?
Yeah.
To what her life becomes.
Totally.
I mean, those early years,
Yeah.
at least from what we can tell from these sources,
Yeah.
they seem like almost idyllic.
Yeah.
Henry, parades her around court, brags about how smart she is, how charming she is.
Yeah.
It's just hard to believe
Right.
that this is the same king who will break with the Catholic Church for a divorce.
Well, I mean, remember, even back then, even in those early years, you can kind of see these challenges, like brewing,
Yeah.
for royalty, your personal life. It's not really personal, is it?
No, it's all political.
It's all political strategy.
Yeah.
And Mary, well, she was a princess. She was a pawn in this game of royal marriage.
Right. She was betrothed to, some really powerful figures.
Oh, yeah, big names. The Dauphin of France.
Yeah.
Later, her
Yeah.
cousin Charles V, the Holy Roman Emperor.
These weren't, childhood promises. These were strategic alliances.
Right.
Meant to, maintain power and influence.
Exactly. And with Charles V, it seems like there might have even been real affection.
Really?
Yeah. Charles sent Mary an emerald ring as a token of their betrothal.
Oh.
And she vowed to never take it off.
Wow.
It wasn't just like a political arrangement. It was, I think, a symbol of hope for her.
Yeah.
Like hope for a future with love and stability.
That's really interesting how these personal moments get all tangled up with these grand schemes.
No, absolutely.
It's almost like watching a chess game
Mm-hmm.
where the players are real people,
Exactly.
with real feelings.
Yeah. And for Mary, that broken engagement with Charles, well, it's kind of a foreshadowing of a much, much bigger heartbreak that was to come later in her life.
And speaking of heartbreak, we can't ignore the elephant in the room.
Yeah.
Henry VIII and his desire for a male heir.
All consuming, right?
It's an obsession.
Yeah.
It drives every decision.
Well, yeah, and it leads him to do what?
Break with the Catholic Church.
Exactly.
It's a pretty big deal.
We have to understand the context a bit here, though, right?
Yeah, I guess so.
The War of the Roses, that was a brutal civil war.
Yeah.
And it was fought over the English throne.
Right.
And it wasn't that long ago.
Yeah, true.
Henry was terrified of history repeating itself. A male heir? In his mind, that was the only way to keep things stable.
Right.
Kept the peace.
So he felt trapped.
In a way, yeah. But, Henry also had a pretty big ego.
He did.
And he was ambitious.
Yeah.
He wasn't just, reacting to pressure. He was actively shaping events, to get what he wanted.
Yeah.
Consequences be damned.
Yeah, and the consequences were, they were devastating.
For sure.
Especially for Mary. And then you've got Anne Boleyn coming onto the scene.
Anne Boleyn, oh yeah.
She's everything Catherine isn't.
Totally.
She's witty, she's charismatic, she's a chance for Henry to, start over.
Yeah.
And maybe finally get that son he's been craving.
So Anne Boleyn arrives at court, and it's a huge power shift.
Yeah.
Henry's infatuated.
Oh, yeah.
And his pursuit of Anne, well, it sets off this chain of events.
Yeah,
it changes everything. The course of English history is forever altered.
It's like watching one of those slow-motion train wrecks.
I know, right?
You know something awful is about to happen.
Yeah.
But you just can't look away.
And Mary's right there, right in the middle of it.
Yeah, and what does Henry do?
Well, he starts to isolate Catherine and Mary.
Yeah.
Their households are diminished, their status stripped away.
Wow.
It's a strategy. He wants to pressure them, make them accept this annulment.
It's heartbreaking to read about Catherine.
Oh, yeah.
She refuses to leave court. She stays close to Mary, even though it means enduring,
The
humiliation.
mother's love, right?
It really is.
Unwavering. Catherine believed her marriage was valid. She believed Mary was the rightful heir,
Yeah.
and she refused to just be cast aside.
I mean, and imagine Mary during all of this.
Oh gosh, I can't even...
She's so young.
So young.
And she's witnessing this, like, her world falling apart.
Her family's being torn apart by these forces way beyond her control.
History isn't just about the dates and the battles. It's about these human stories, right?
Absolutely.
These personal tragedies.
And unfolding against the backdrop of these big events.
Yeah. And for Mary, well...
We see it in the sources.
Okay.
She's battling all these mysterious illnesses during this time.
Mm-hmm.
Probably stress,
Right.
trauma of being separated from her mother.
She's just a young woman.
Barely a teenager.
And facing this situation that, well, most of us could never even fathom.
Most of us couldn't even fathom.
No, we couldn't.
And as we dig deeper into her story,
Right.
we're going to see just how much these early experiences really shaped her worldview, her faith.
And eventually her destiny, right?
Oh, for sure.
So stick with us. We're going to unpack the next chapter of Mary's life.
Oh, yeah.
We'll uncover how she navigated this treacherous path, right?
Oh, yeah.
She faced betrayal, she faced loss,
Yeah.
but in the end, she found a resilience
A resilience.
that defined her legacy.
Exactly.
Yeah, so stay tuned.
Stay tuned.
We left off with Mary. I mean, she's completely isolated,
Oh, yeah.
stripped of her title,
Yeah.
and facing all this pressure to conform.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to imagine what she must have been going through.
It really is a period of intense vulnerability, you know?
Yeah.
She's torn between her loyalty to her mother and, well, the power of her father.
Mm-hmm.
And then in 1536, tragedy strikes. Catherine of Aragon dies,
Oh, gosh.
most likely from cancer, but of course there were rumors
Oh, I bet.
of poisoning swirling around the court, adding to this whole grim situation.
That's almost like a Shakespearean drama or something.
I know, right?
And Mary isn't even allowed to say goodbye to her mother.
No.
The sources, I mean, they talk about her anguish, her pleas to see Catherine one last time.
All ignored by Henry.
It speaks volumes, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah. About Henry's determination to break Catherine's influence, to solidify his new marriage to Anne Boleyn. But it's also strategic, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
By denying Mary this final act of saying goodbye to her mom, it's another way to isolate her,
Right.
reinforce her powerlessness.
But then, well, things take a pretty dramatic turn, don't they?
They do.
Just a few months after Catherine's death, Anne Boleyn falls from grace.
She does.
Accused of treason, adultery, I mean, even incest.
Oh, yeah.
And she's imprisoned.
Imprisoned and executed.
Executed.
It's a stark reminder, isn't it?
Yeah.
Of just how fickle power can be.
Especially in the Tudor court.
Oh, especially there. The things that drew Henry to her, the wit, the charisma,
Right.
that sense of modernity, they ended up contributing to her downfall.
Wow.
Her enemies, well, they sensed weakness,
Right.
and they pounced.
Yeah.
This web of accusations, whether they were true or not, it didn't really matter.
Right.
It was impossible to escape.
It's just this whirlwind.
I know.
1 minute Anne's the queen, the next she's a traitor.
Yeah.
I wonder, did Mary see it as some kind of like justice?
It's hard to say.
Yeah.
The sources, I mean, they're a little ambiguous
Go
about
ahead.
Mary's feelings towards Anne, but, there's definitely a sense of relief, like the pressure's off a little.
Right.
But it doesn't change Mary's situation, does it?
No, she's still illegitimate.
Still illegitimate.
Still a threat to the Tudors.
Potentially, yeah.
And of course, we know Henry, he doesn't stay single for long.
He does not.
He marries Jane Seymour.
Jane Seymour.
And well, she seems to have played a pretty important role in Mary's life.
Oh, definitely. At least for a while.
Yeah.
She's an interesting figure,
Yeah.
Unlike Anne Boleyn, who was, she was a disruptor.
Right.
Jane, she represented traditional values. Pious, gentle.
And she seemed to actually care about Mary.
She did, yeah.
And she encourages this reconciliation
Right.
between Mary and Henry.
Yes. At Jane's urging, and with a little help from Mary's cousin, Charles V, Mary agrees to sign some documents, accepting the annulment of her parents' marriage.
Right.
And acknowledging that she's illegitimate.
Wow, that's a lot.
It must have been incredibly difficult for her.
It's like she's choosing between her mother's memory and her own survival.
It really highlights those impossible choices, doesn't it?
It really does.
But, even though it might seem like a defeat,
Yeah.
it also shows us Mary's political savvy.
Really?
Oh, yeah. She's learning. She's understanding that sometimes to survive, you have to compromise, even if it means, swallowing your pride.
And then for a while, things seem to settled down.
A little bit.
She gets her own household back.
Yeah.
She's close with Jane Seymour.
Yeah.
And then, well, Jane gives birth to a son, Edward.
The long-awaited male heir.
It's a huge turning point, isn't it?
It seems like the succession is secure, no more fears of another civil war.
Right.
And it brings Mary and Henry closer together.
Okay.
He sees her as an ally now, someone who will support Edward.
There's almost like a sense of normalcy returning.
It seems like it, yeah.
But Tudor history is never peaceful for long.
Never.
Jane Seymour dies.
Shortly after childbirth.
Right.
And Henry, well, let's just say he wasn't known for his fidelity.
No, not at all.
3 more marriages.
Wow.
Each one bringing its own set of complications.
Challenges.
It's during this time that she really hones her survival skills.
In the world of politics.
Oh, yeah. The landscape of the court is constantly changing.
Right.
She avoids making enemies.
Right.
But maintains her own position.
She's learning to play the game.
She is. She's learning to read the room, pick her battles, and adapt to Henry.
So she's not just like watching this all happen.
No.
She's actively learning and growing.
In this pressure cooker of a court.
But I mean, at what cost, right?
That's the question.
She witnessed her mother's downfall.
Right.
Anne Boleyn's execution, all these power struggles within her own family.
Did it shape her?
Yeah, how did it change her worldview?
That's something we'll look at as we move into the next chapter of Mary's life.
Right, when she becomes queen.
We'll see if these early experiences, these scars, influenced how she ruled.
Stay with us. We're going to be diving into the next chapter, the next part of Mary's life.
Oh, yeah, it's a big one.
She ascends to the throne.
And the choices she makes as queen, well...
They're going to reveal a lot about her.
About who she became.
We've been through a lot with Mary. I mean, her early life was just, wow. Privilege, heartbreak, you name it.
It really sets the stage for, the ruler she becomes.
Yeah, it's like all those experiences.
The power struggles, the faith, the resilience, it all goes back to those early years.
So Henry VIII finally kicks the bucket in 1547. You'd think, okay, this is Mary's time.
Right.
But Edward, Jane Seymour's son.
Yeah.
He becomes king, right? Edward VI.
He does, yeah. Young king, surrounded by advisors who are, all about the Protestant Reformation.
And that's got to be tough for Mary.
Oh, yeah. Edward's reign, short as it was a big shift for England. Religiously, politically.
Everything she believed in was being challenged.
The Protestant reforms that Henry started, they gained momentum. England moving further and further away from the Catholic Church.
It must have felt like, I don't know, like everything was falling apart.
It was a threat. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Not just to her faith, but to her personally.
She held on to her beliefs for so long.
All those years resisting the pressure to conform.
Right.
And now it's all at risk.
And she saw herself as the rightful heir, too.
Oh, yeah. She believed her claim to the throne was, it was divine, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Ordained by God.
And Edward being Protestant, well, I mean, that was just a slap in the face.
Absolutely. It was a rejection of everything she stood for.
And then Edward, he's not even in good health. He pulls this crazy move.
Yeah, he does.
He names Lady Jane Grey as his successor.
His cousin, a Protestant.
It's like, come on, really?
Well, it's about power, isn't it? The Protestant faction in the court, they're worried about Mary.
Of course.
They're afraid of her Catholicism. They want someone who will keep the reforms going.
But they underestimated Mary, didn't they?
They did, yeah. They forgot about the people,
Oh, yeah.
many of whom were still Catholic.
Yeah.
Loyal to Mary.
So Edward dies in 1553.
Yeah.
And Mary, well, she's not going down without a fight.
No, she gathers her forces, rallies her supporters.
And marches on London.
It's a bold move.
A total power play.
But it works.
It does.
Jane Grey's support collapses.
And Mary becomes Queen of England.
Finally.
Proclaimed queen.
Crowds cheering, seeing her as a symbol of hope.
Yeah, a return to the old ways.
With a familiar face.
A restoration of order.
Exactly.
I mean, what a feeling that must have been.
Can you imagine?
Years of being pushed aside.
Underestimated.
And now, finally, she's in charge.
Queen of England.
But it's a lot of responsibility, right?
It is, and all those experiences, they shape how she rules.
Right.
She's not naive.
No.
She's seen how fragile power is.
Yeah.
How quickly things can change.
She's seen the dark side of it all.
The ruthlessness.
And she brings that with her.
Into the role of queen.
And she wants to bring England back to Catholicism.
Oh, yeah. It was her mission, wasn't it? To undo what she saw as her father's betrayal.
It was personal for her.
It was her identity.
Yeah.
Her legitimacy.
But her methods, they were pretty brutal.
They were.
The persecution of Protestants,
Yeah.
the burnings, the executions. I mean, that's how she gets the name Bloody Mary.
It's a dark period.
The dark chapter in English history.
But we have to remember the context here.
Right.
Religious persecution, I mean, that was common back then.
It was everywhere.
Both Catholics and Protestants, when they were in power, they used violence.
So, I mean, we can't condone her actions.
No.
But we can try to understand them.
As part of a bigger pattern.
A reflection of the times.
Exactly.
Mary's reign. It was short.
Ended in 1558.
But it shows us just how complicated history can be.
How faith, power, personal experience, it all comes together.
And all shapes a ruler.
Mary was a product of her time, but she was also an individual driven by her convictions.
And those convictions led her down a path of, well,
Triumph and tragedy.
Mary Tudor. It's a story that makes us think, doesn't it?
It does. It challenges us to look beyond the simple labels.
Right?
To really grapple with the nuances of history.
To remember that even the most powerful people are shaped by the world around them.
By their experiences.
And that's what the deep dive is all about, isn't it?
It is. We go beyond the headlines, beyond the surface.
To explore these intricate stories, these forces that shape us.
And we hope you'll join us next time.
For another deep dive.
Another captivating tale.
We'll be unearthing another piece of history.
Exploring the complexities of the human experience.
See you next time.